Welcome to another Mark Bishop show. Ah, boy, these wildfires are a concern, aren't they? And look at Canada. They say that they'll never take them out. Look, have you contacted your insurer to make sure you have the right coverage? The price of construction materials, has risen by 33%. And the price of labor, it's gone up 27% from January 2020 through December 2022. Now, inflation, supply chain issues, and increased demand for construction materials following unprecedented natural disasters in the last 3 years have contributed to a significant increase in the costs to rebuild homes and businesses. So this is what you've got to keep in mind. Karen Collins is the Vice President at American Property Casualty Insurance Association, APCIA. Good morning and welcome, Karen.
Morning. Thank you.
Well, as wildfire risks and reconstruction costs increase, I guess now is the time to take action to review or update one's insurance coverage and mitigate property to lower ember intrusion, as they say. I mean, many homeowners may find that they're underinsured after a wildfire if they have not updated their insurance policy recently. Are you finding this out now?
Yes, as you mentioned, inflation and supply chain delays are really increasing these costs for reconstruction, even adding to longer time frames to recover. So you really do need to take some time and do review your policy to make sure you have the right amount and the right type of coverage so you're not going to be falling short. These material costs are up 33% and labor prices 27%, as you mentioned. And so if you do have a loss, you just want to make sure that your policy is reflecting all the features and square footage of your home, especially, coming out of that COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of people did some improvements to their home and maybe added some square footage or updated their kitchen. So make sure that those are reflected.
Well, what I'm going to ask you, Karen, if you'd be so kind for my listeners, how about giving some tips to them, like without frightening the devil out of them, but how to prepare, all right? So preparation's everything, isn't it?
Absolutely. The first thing you want to do is try to avoid that loss in the first place. So how can you prevent embers from igniting your home if a wildfire happens? And there are 3 core tips that we offer to create an ember-resistant zone. First off, create defensible space. Break that continuity of fuels around your home, both vertically and horizontally. Get rid of all of the items that might be combustible in that 0 to 5 feet. That might include trimming branches that overhang your roof. Get rid of all that dead vegetation, especially in this hot part of the summer that's setting in. Clear those roofs and gutters. Keep anything combustible off your deck. Those are all defensible space. Tip 2, harden your home. Seal the garage door. Make sure there's no cracks that are an entry point for them to come into the house. Use mesh screening at least 1/8 of an inch or smaller over all your vents to protect your eaves and vents so that they don't come inside the home through those spaces. And also reduce your fence risk. A lot of fences that are made of wood are combustible, and that can act like a wick that brings the fire right to your home and ignites it. So those are 2 tips. But number 3, it needs to be a community effort. Talk to your neighbors. Their risk is your risk. And so you want to get your neighbors involved. There's some great programs out there. One is the FireWise USA program, which is nationally recognized. And they can help communities as small as 8 units to upwards of 2,500 units to create an action plan so that together you're working to reduce your wildfire risk.
Well, we're going to look at those in a second, but I do want to ask you this. How then can you prevent underinsurance and to make sure and ensure that your finances are protected by a wildfire?
Financial preparedness is so important because your home is generally your biggest asset. So you want to make sure it's covered. And often the federal disaster grants are just not enough to rebuild. So you want to make sure that financial safety net with insurance is solid. So 5 quick tips on financial preparedness. 1, do those annual insurance checkups. Make sure you understand what those key coverages are. Talk to your insurance company or agent to talk through your policy limits and the coverage included on an annual basis. As I mentioned, square footage and the materials of your home, they matter. Your home limits are based on the reconstruction costs. So making sure those are accurate for your home is really important. There's a couple other key coverages to even help increase your limits. One is called extended replacement cost coverage, and that will help boost your limits if the surge in demand happens after a large natural disaster, and that'll increase your limits. Also, if you live in an older home, ordinance and law coverage can help also increase your limits if you're required to meet newer building codes. So have those reviews with your agent. Number two, take the time to know what your own policy covers. There's differences in the types of policy, replacement cost or actual cash value, which will take depreciation into account and pays less for those older items. Tip number three, make sure you update that policy to cover home improvements. I just mentioned there was a lot of folks that did those during the COVID pandemic when we were all kind of staying at home. So if you've done those changes, make sure they're reflected. Tip four, if you have a home that's paid off, one, congratulations, that's great, but make sure you maintain the homeowner's insurance on that property. Don't be caught after a fire with no way to rebuild your home. So if you've got loved ones that have paid those homes off, just, double check and make sure they still have that policy coverage. And then number five, we don't forget our renters. Renters insurance is also very important. These renters can lose everything in a fire, just like homeowners. And the good news is many auto insurers will bundle renters coverage together, and it makes it really affordable. So don't forget to consider that if you're a renter.
Oh, they're marvelous tips. They're very good. And you go back to combustible materials to 0 to 5 feet around your home, Karen. So many people have so much junk around the place. Got to clean up, get it done, because any of those can catch. And there's another good one too, I think you mentioned, trimming the trees overhanging your home, plus getting rid of the debris from your roof and gutters. That's another important one. A lot of dry leaves in there as well. But, calling your agent, speaking, being proactive. Remember the old Boy Scouts thing, be prepared? I think it really comes down to doing this one. And as Karen says, it's important to contact your insurer and ensure that, your coverage, you think you're covered. Nothing would be worse, wouldn't it, looking at the thing on the ground and finding out you're not covered. By the way, Karen, how do you make a home inventory to make recovery easier? How do you do that?
Home inventories, folks don't realize the value and benefit of these. They are so helpful in the event a fire happens where, sadly, if everything is lost. So having this done ahead of a fire is so important. And this is simply documenting the contents of your home. You can take a video or photograph through each room of your house. Just, make sure you're documenting drawers and closets of what exists in there. And while you're doing that with a video, you'll describe what those contents are, maybe what you paid and where or when you bought those items while you're taking the video. This is particularly helpful with higher end items like electronics, appliances, sport equipment, any TVs, computers and such. And then most importantly, once you've taken the steps to do it, keep it safe. Store those documents in the cloud or a fireproof case if you have one. And then don't forget those unusual areas of your house where there might be a lot of stuff, like the garage. If you're like me, there's a lot of stuff out there, and we want to make sure that we don't forget to document those areas also. Again, these are helpful just because this is a record that you will need to create as part of the insurance claim process to say, essentially, what was lost in the fire, and having that available beforehand can be really, really helpful. So you're not having to think and create that list, after the fact when everything maybe was tragically lost. Yeah,
that's right. And, you can forget about stuff that's expensive that you have bought, or maybe it's a gift and it's expensive and you're racking your brains. What else was there? She's dead right about that. Get that inventory list down. And Karen, of course, is the vice president at American Property Casualty Insurance Association. And just before we go, now there was a lot of wonderful tips and advice that you did give. Your website has a lot of stuff on it for people to read, right, Karen?
It certainly does. If you'd like more information, definitely come and visit our site. It is www.apci.org.
There you go. Just get a pen. Go on, hurry up. A lot of people forget things. Like me, I've got to rush and get something. It's www.apci.org. apci.org. Remember, not a com, .org/wildfire. And everything's there for you to read. Thank you, Karen. Very informative. And it was a pleasure having you on the show.
Thanks so much. I greatly appreciate it.